for me, it's just trusting, people that you've known over a decade. And, when I got traded here, my whole thing was I wanted to retire a Sixer. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be here and retire a Sixer. And the front office didn't have that in their future plans. Me and front office has had a very, very good relationship, like I said, for a decade. So there was constant communication, you know what I mean? And there was no communication, once we lost. So.
Do you think this is something that can be repaired?
No.
It can't?
When you, and this is not even about this situation, this is in life. Like, when you lose trust in someone, you know what I mean? It's like a marriage. Like, you lose trust in someone, it's like hot, you know what I mean? So, it's pretty simple.
Okay, so there was a whole lot there.
Yeah.
Richard, I want to start with you. Your reaction to these comments from James Harden, the first one that we've heard in 2 months.
I understand everything he's saying. I think for me, it is nearly impossible to win an NBA championship just in general. And it is actually impossible to win a championship unless every single person is pushing in the same direction at 100%. James Harden is telling you he will never push in that direction. Will he play basketball? He'll play basketball. Will he give his 110%? Because Philly wants to be a competitive team. They believe that they can have a chance to win a championship with Joel Embiid in their roster. But unless all of these guys are pushing, which he is telling you, hey, I'm here, but I'm not fully committed. And I'm telling you, I don't know how long this is going to take, but ultimately this is about Philly's pain tolerance. How long can they allow a player that most likely will just play average, just be out on the court? He'll still be James Harden to a certain degree because he doesn't want to trade value to drop, and all of a sudden it looks like he's not invested. But ultimately, he is just not there, but he is going to be there.
But he's been practicing.
Yeah.
Said he likes Nick Nurse's offense, gets along with his teammates. Obviously, there is no long-term future for James Harden and the Sixers. That's clear. But the idea that they can't get through part of this season with him, he has said, I'm going to be professional. I care about the game. I think you have to wait and see what he shows you once the season starts. And if James Harden shows them that he's not going to play hard, that he's not going to compete at the level that they need him to, I think they would just sideline James Harden. I don't think they would let it go on. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And I don't know that James Harden has said that's not going to happen. Listen, there is going to be real serious trade discussions at some time this season. It is just hard to do them in this league in the preseason.
You're right, Woj. He hasn't said it and he hasn't showed it yet, but we all are still holding our breaths. And Richard, I know you talked about pain tolerance. That's what you heard. What I actually heard was a little bit of timeline. He tried to explain what his position was, especially after the loss. And I find it very interesting that after Philly losses, there are problems. And we do see those internal bubbles coming to fruition and then bursting, meaning a couple years ago, we saw the loss. Ben Simmons was the problem, right? Once again, he just said, hey, I've had decades worth of communication with someone, and then all of a sudden after a loss, yeah, we all know. I mean, he didn't say the name, but we can say it. Daryl
Talking about Daryl Morey.
But then after the loss, radio silence. At least that's what it seemed like he intimated in some degree. And so that timeline, I think he was trying to share that there was a switch up here that affected me, and this is I guess there was distrust built from that, and this is where we are today.
Well, speaking of timeline, right? We've talked about what are the deadlines that we are hitting in terms of seeing if we get to this critical point. The next deadline, where we're at now, is when are we going to see James Harden play in a preseason game or in a game at all? Because we have not seen that yet. He addressed when he expects to suit up today.
I'm still ramping up, you know what I mean? Like, I'm still ramping up, trying to get myself in the best shape. I feel really, really good, you know what I mean? But there's another level I feel like I can get to and that I am going to get to. So I'm sure there's, I think, one more preseason game after that. So I'll still, no, after, yeah. So I'll ramp it up and try to play the last one just to get myself in game situations and get used to the physicality of, defenders bumping you or whatnot, the speed, the tempo, all that good stuff. So I think we got a good plan in place.
Listen, guys, there are a lot of players in the NBA who do not have good relationships with management. There are players who are in the last year of their deal, like James Harden, and there's players with multiple years on this deal at the money they wanted. You don't have to have a great relationship with your president of your team or any relationship with him. You don't play with him. And so while this is more high profile because of the history of James Harden and Daryl Morey, the fact that in a lot of ways these two really helped to make each other. Daryl Morey trades for him in Oklahoma City, where he's a sixth man of the year, and turned him to a scoring champion, into an MVP in Houston. And he didn't turn him into that. James Harden did that, but certainly there was an environment there built around James Harden, traded for him again from Philly to Brooklyn. But listen, there again does not have to be any kind of a relationship for him to play, be professional, do his job, and wait to either be traded or to become a free agent and sign somewhere else next year.
Sure, and we could see this continue to pop up in this new CBA with aging players not necessarily getting these same huge contracts that we have seen historically. But the relationship part, absolutely true. But you got to get on the floor. I do want to bring Zach Lowe, Kendrick Perkins into this conversation because, Zach, this was the thing that you have been watching. When is James Harden going to suit up? After what you heard today, do you feel better or worse about the situation in Philadelphia?
About the same. And these are just words, and the words he said confirmed what we already knew. The relationship is broken. He's mad that there was no communication ahead of free agency and when free agency was beginning. That's what he's mad about. We know that. The words are words. I want to see it on the court. Woj just talked about how there have been other unhappy players before. Other guys in the last year of their contracts, they show up, they play. But this is James Harden. Go back and watch the Nets-Kings game in Sacramento, the time when James Harden last season wanted to be traded, 2 seasons ago rather, wanted to be traded. Go watch his last few games in Houston. That is not a player that you can have on the court. It's half effort at best. And if that player appears, it's a totally different story. And I do agree that one solution, and maybe the one they'll pick, is just to say, okay, go to the bench or go home until we can trade you, and cross our fingers that the Clippers and 2 or 3 other teams start badly and really start to get desperate and give us the offers that we want, because that's a guy that's detrimental to your team. And by the way, here's a number for you. Last season, with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey on the floor and no Harden, the Sixers were over plus 10 per 100 possessions. That is an elite number. I think they can tread water if James Harden is off the team, because those two guys are that good, and Maxey is poised to take that much of a leap. But if you're, say, 18-12 after 30 games, that's a good season. The Bucks might be 25-5. The Celtics might be 23-7, and you feel like you're just too far behind at that point. What are the vibes like then? What is Joel Embiid thinking then? When does this start to become an untenable situation?
Harden shows up, is given like half effort, just like, hey, I'm here, I'm doing my job. And they're like, okay, go home. Joel Embiid is like, I'm in my prime of my career. What are we doing here? And to say we want another trade pick in 2028, you know how old Joel Embiid's going to be with his banged up body? He's not worried about that. He wants to win now. So everything that gets prolonged, and this is why I've said it, if this continues and this gets ugly, to me, Joel Embiid needs to leave. Joel Embiid needs to leave as soon as possible. And let me say this is the reason why. You look at the Ben Simmons. You look at picking, Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. You look, and all of these things were not Daryl Morey, but if you look at all of the things that the 76ers organization has done over the tenure of Joel Embiid, and if this doesn't get handled quickly and in the best way possible, I'm sorry. They have not taken care of Joel Embiid the same way that the Milwaukee Bucks have taken care of Giannis. And I'm looking around like there's got to be more stable franchises here than what's going on in Philly the last 5 or 6 years.